Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And yes, the talk is going to be in English. My Finnish is still on the grocery level. Apologies for that. Thank you for the space of communicating here. I'm Ian MacGregor-Fors. I am a professor of urban biodiversity and ecosystems here in Viki. And the talk today, I intend to try to share and raise awareness and set context into a very unpopular topic, which is how birds collide with windows, and what do we know, and what do we probably need to do about it. So first things first, there's some very interesting studies showing that the main reasons that are behind the death of birds, besides habitat loss, this is very important to say, is in the graph. So you can see cats as being the most important one. Very importantly, this axis is log transformed, so the differences are huge. You can see this is 2.2 billion and it goes to 600 million. So the graph is just for these small things to be seen. And then the second cause is bird window collisions, then automobiles, and it keeps on going. And this is really interesting because there's lots of things being done and said with wind turbines, for example, but it's very little been said and done about building windows and the collision with them being a huge cost. This is a paper for the US and Canada only, and the thing is that we only have good data for the US and Canada, so that is why the extrapolations are done there. So taking that into context, it is very important because we can see that in the world, when we analyze the human population, it was somewhere between 2006 and 8, it depends on the source, that the human population went from being mostly rural or non-urban to mostly urban. And this means that we get more cities, more buildings, more windows. And this is very important for this topic, right? So this is the amount of built cover. And the only way that I could find this was in this very horrible format. So I did a figure for you guys so you can see the amount of built area that has been around our planet since our history. And you can see that after year 1000, things got really, really crazy. But then the curve nowadays is just completely impressively high, right? And this only means the area. It doesn't have to do the physiognomy. It just has to do with the sprawling of urban areas across the globe. One of the very worrying parts for bird window collisions is that, as you can see in this publication, very recent publication from one of the leading researchers regarding this topic, Karen Cito, is that cities are transforming in a way in which they grow, and they are mostly growing from this type of urbanization, the houses, the 2 or 3 story maximum places, to this other huge, large skyscrapers, which we almost always know will be completely covered in glass, in window panes. We have this case very close to our hearts here in Kalasatama, for example, in which these huge skyscrapers are mostly surrounded or covered by window panes. So if we remember that back in 2015, the amount of bird window collisions was in the US only, and let's focus only on the US because that's where the information comes from, it's 600 million, right, a year. However, a very recent publication came out from the leading expert on the topic, Daniel Clem, in which they actually started doing some more experimental studies in which they found that 50% of the collisions leave no measurable evidence of the strike. And as much as 70% of the stunned victims likely die from a collision, then annual mortality goes from the several hundreds in the US as high as to 5.2 billion, which would set the situation in the realm over cats, which I don't personally think that it's a huge issue in Finland, for example, cats. So even if without the correction of Professor Klem's group, I think that in Finland, windows are the most important part. And it is very weird to hear a scientist say, I think, but that is one of the problems we have. It's we don't have data in Finland. But let me continue. Why does this phenomenon happen? Well, you can see it in this image already, right? The bird doesn't know that this is a window and that this is air. Reason why Dr. Klem named his book Solid Air. That is basically what the birds are seeing. So there are two types of bird window collisions. One is the one that is reflective. So they're actually seeing some habitat or some air that they can fly through. But then we also have the three see-through windows, right? So the birds can actually physically see what's on the other side and they try to cross. This has happened forever. This is very common. For example, I always, every time I go to a mökki, or everybody, sometimes the people go to their mökkis, they always send pictures of collided birds. It doesn't really matter if the window is huge. It doesn't really matter if the skyscraper is completely covered in window panes. Every single window can be a mortal element for birds, sadly. So what do we know? We do have lots of kind of observational knowledge of, oh, I found this bird here, we reported, there are some data sets. For example, here in Finland, there is this data set that comes from the ringed birds. So people report the ringed bird that died with a collision, and then Luonnon and other museums have gathered the information. But it is not that we have rigorous radar or field or laboratory experiments that would allow us to actually build upon informing policymaking outside Northern America. Very recently, at the very end of last year, we published a special issue about the topic, and there we published the first literature review on the topic, right? And as you can see, concern has met the number of publications regarding this topic. However, if you see the map, you can see the Americas having tons of information while other parts of the world are basically missing. This is in the scientific literature, right? The knowledge that is to be translated into action is mostly from the Americas. If we zoom into Western, Northern and Southern Europe, or Europe in general, mostly, you can see that there is knowledge for Poland and Germany, but the rest is very unknown for one of the most important reasons behind bird death, which is already haunting. So in this review, you can see that there's lots of observational stuff. There's some field experiments, and these findings show, that many of the things that we actually do are insufficient, like putting the silhouettes of birds. That is highly insufficient. There are some commercial products that can work, but it's very expensive in general to use them. There are some architectural ways to evading this problem, like using mullions. They are like structures that you put in front of the buildings, etc., etc. But one very important one that was addressed recently only in the US, it's the amount of carcasses that get removed. We never get to count them. So these are very silent deaths. So we can go into the newspapers in Finland. You'll see millions of birds die into flying with windows. Migratory birds are dying in Finland. I don't speak Finnish, but you understand what this says. And we have this on the on the newspapers. We know that my colleagues at BirdLife Finland are always alerting about this problem, right? However, as we said in a grant proposal recently, to our knowledge, there's no single standardized or control experiment in Finland that we can draw upon to mitigate or do this, right? And one of the basic ideas that we have and we would like to pursue here is to actually see under the Finnish scenarios with our windows that have two or three panes that work differently, with our shades that work differently, with the angle of the light that may be different in several parts of the year in Finland, are different or similar to what is being done in the US. Sadly, this type of topic, we always find it in the middle between basic science and applied sciences. So we often go to the applied sciences, they say, oh, this is too basic science, and the way around. And this is among the topics that are super pressing. And I think that people in audiences like this one need to hear. And yes, while we're discussing this, billions of birds silently fall victim to window collisions globally. Thank you.